A very good morning to all of you. Welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express Papers Chandigarh edition. Before starting with the analysis, I would like to tell you that we have a Telegram channel, IASPrimers, wherein we are sharing current affairs based questions on a regular basis, 5 questions daily, so you can practice them. And for more updates, also, please do join our channel and be a part of our community. Now, coming to the news topics. So, the following topics we are covering. So, over here, the topic on gene therapy for sickle cell anemia treatment is important from GS3 point of view. So, one is the issue of sickle cell anemia, and other is what treatment is being followed. So, that is there. So, the treatment that is referred is gene therapy, which is based on CRISPR Cas9 model. Now, this technology got Nobel Prize in Chemistry 2020. So again, we need to cover this topic as well. Then, moving to the editorial section, we have an article concerning application of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So some strong observations have come from the Supreme Court about misuse of strong laws in curbing dissent. So this topic is important. And further, in 2019, a question was asked on the recent changes made to the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act and concerns associated with human rights. Okay. Apps issue, lending apps issues, again, it is there. Now it is in the editorial section. Okay. Then look at this article. Inclusion of transgenders in armed forces. So today we have the author who's telling us what steps can the army take to include transgenders, what accommodations need to be made. Okay. Then coming to the economy section, we have monthly economic review by the finance ministry. So an overview of the Indian economy is mentioned and the projections. Besides, we know in the recent times, deep fakes have been there in the news. So IT ministry is in talks with several social media companies and they are coming up with standard operating procedures. So you see, as far as the exam goes, so definition of deep fakes you get, right? Concerns associated, we know more or less. Now, if they ask you what are the suggested measures, so one is what steps can be taken, other thing is what suggested measures. So there you can quote the SOPs. It will come in a short time. Then there is a company known as OneWeb. It will provide, in India, it will provide direct internet from satellites. So that will be done. It is modeled on Elon Musk's Starlink platform company. Right. So this has got an authorization from the governments in space. So again, we should know about in space as well. So all that from prelims as well as mains so that we can see. Then last one, yesterday there was a news that IIT Ropar researchers found a rare metal known as tantalum. So this was found in Sutlej. So today we have the properties of tantalum, who discovered it, and the applications of this. So again, this is more of a pre kind of thing. Right? So key things we should know. Okay, coming to the front page now. Okay, so Mr. Jay Shankar, our Foreign Affairs Minister, was in a meeting, BRICS Leaders Summit, and there he focused on the issue of the Gaza issue. So he said that there should be relief that should reach Gaza, and beside the hostage situation that is there, it is unacceptable. Right? So Hamas, which has captured people from Israel, so that is unacceptable. So that is what India is saying. Further, India is in favor of a two-state solution. Two-state means the coexistence of Israel and and the Palestinians in that region. Moving on to the next news, but related news. Israel has listed Lashkar-e-Taiba, a terror organization with which India has a problem. So it has listed Lashkar as a terror outfit. Now it wants India to proscribe Hamas as a terror organization. But India has not done so at the moment. India is refraining from doing so because if they do so, then India risks spoiling its relations with the Arab nations. So India is quite wary of this. It is not directly name. It is condemning the violence, but it is not naming Hamas as such. So that is now India is in a spot of bother. Okay, we have an interview of ex-Chief Justice who made strong remarks against the Election Commission. That is for, Election Commission during the 2020 time period when the COVID was there. So for not abiding by the COVID protocol. So they said, why not murder charges be levied against you? So that remark was there. So thereby this thing is there. So here he says that overall, the Supreme Court should be wary of giving judgments, but at the same time, there is a need for intervention also. So, as far as we are concerned, the following needs to be focused. So, one is role of election commission in ensuring impartial elections. So, that is one theme. Then we can talk about reforms. So one is overall electoral reforms and reforming and strengthening the institution of election commission. So those things came to my mind when I was reading this topic. Next, this is about the science and tech topic that I was talking about, sickle cell issue. So there is this person, Victoria Gray, who's suffering from sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is a condition. uh, Let me just draw this. So let's say this are our blood, uh, red blood cells, right? Red blood cells carry oxygen. They have hemoglobin. Oxygen binds to this, and they carry oxygen to different parts of the body. In sickle cell anemia, what happens is the red blood cell becomes like this. It becomes like a sickle. So you see the surface area has come down over here. The surface area is less. So the oxygen carrying capacity is less. As a result of this, people feel anemic or weak. Right. Now, this is a genetic blood disorder. It is not like you can have antibiotics or some other medicine and you can get treated. So this is the genetic blood disorder. Now, recently, not so recent, also in 2017, she was part of a clinical trial for this sickle cell anemia treatment. She got a gene therapy treatment which was based on CRISPR Cas9. I have shared the video on this topic, by the way. So she got a treatment, gene therapy treatment, and it has shown improvements. And thereby, the UK government has approved the use of this methodology to treat sickle cell anemia. Fine. Okay. Now I have already told you CRISPR Cas9 got a Nobel Prize in Chemistry 2020. And the persons involved were these who developed this methodology. And I have shared with you a 2-minute video. Please watch it and summarize CRISPR Cas9 working in your own words. Please do it. It is very, 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 very important. Just summarize that. Now, no, nothing you have to do. Just summarize it. That's all. Okay. So this thing is there. Now, of course, in India's scenario, we get the knowledge of this. This can be implemented in India's context as well. Now, as far as India is concerned, what is the prevalence of sickle cell anemia? So 8.75% prevalence is there, right? And it is more so in tribal population. So Ministry of Tribe, so tribal people are more affected. So it is over there, it is more. And it is estimated that 30 to 40,000 children are born with this disorder every year. And there is no treatment to this. Recent time there was an interview of health minister, the junior health minister, and he said that uh, we at best what we can do is we can have screening and inform. So when marriage is taking place, we know that so and so is concerned with sickle cell anemia, so don't marry that person. So that's the best we can do. Okay, next moving on. Next should be stubble burning. Okay. So there is this Supreme Court case which is going on associated with the stubble burning. We have discussed it enough. So briefly again revisiting the pointers. So Supreme Court is telling Punjab, why don't you take lessons from Haryana? They have done excellent work in dealing with stubble burning. Right. And one of the suggestions they're telling the government is, why don't you deny MSP to those farmers who engage in stubble burning? Now, if you look at this issue of stubble burning, so first of all, what are the causes associated? This part deals with the causes. One of the judge says that you're making a villain out of the farmer, but it is the conditions which are there which the government has to deal with it. It is not so much the farmer who is the villain. So, what are the causes? So, cause number one is high turnaround time. So, Kharif, which is grown during the monsoon time, then we have the Rabi cultivation. So there is not enough time to clear the Kharif land from the Kharif crop and cultivate Rabi. So the farmers use shortcut of burning stubble to clear the land. So for this, Pusa 44 is being blamed. Pusa 44 is being cultivated, which takes 160 days for harvesting, from sowing to harvesting, 160 days. So now alternative like Pusa 120, 126, so those are being proposed. So as we say Pusa 120, it is actually 120 days, approx 120 days to mature. Then of course it is expensive to clear the stubble. The farmers require labor, so that is there. And besides labor, the machines, the capital, the machines like seeder machines, etc., they are expensive. So the government is providing these subsidies on these machines, but there also the farmer is saying that we keep the machine, but machine is required only for a 15-day window, 30-day window. Other time it is laying idle. And the government is proposing the custom hiring model, but then of course you can think that even if the custom hiring model is there, everybody would need the machine at the same point of time. So that may be a problem. Okay, next. The farmers say that okay, fine, we remove the stubble. Now, what do we do with this stubble? What do we do with this straw? Right? There is not enough incentives for us. We don't know what to do. We can give, okay, fine, so much is given to the fodder, but what else after that? Nothing. We don't know what to do. So, with regards to this, so we know the issues now. What steps need to be taken? So, we can have a carrot and stick approach, right? Carrot and stick. So carrot means incentives, so market related incentives, for example providing subsidies on the happy seeder machine and all those things. Besides, the stubble is there, so stubble being made into briquettes and then it could be sold into the market, or making pellets and using it as a fuel. So those things are there. Converting it into ethanol. So waste to energy model, so that can be provided. Coming to the stick, so legal and punitive actions can be taken against the farmers. One such punitive action has been mentioned: denial of MSP for those involved in this thing. Then fine and imprisonment. Some laws have been brought in that if farmer engage in this, they shall be punished. So those are there. Now, what is Haryana doing? So Haryana is basically giving subsidy for in situ management of paddy crop residue. Plus, they are saying that please move away from paddy cultivation. Paddy is using lot of water. So diversify into other crops. So those are being encouraged under the scheme Meri Pani, Meri Virasat scheme. Further, they are encouraging direct seeding of rice technique. Here it is direct seeding of rice only, but somewhere here direct sowing of rice is mentioned. Again, direct seeding of rice separately also needs to be prepared. Okay, so coming to the subsequent articles now. So a brief update on the tunnel. So these are the people living in the tunnel. So the people from the outside have gotten visual contact of the people within the tunnel. Coming to the editorial opinion section now. So this one, error in terror. This is about the application of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So error in application of this. Okay. So first, what we can do, we can simply cover this thing, article, right? What are the key elements? And then we will discuss the question. Not discuss, I'll just state the question. Okay. So there is a journalist Fahad Shah, who was recently granted bail by the Jammu and Kashmir High Court, and this person was arrested under the provisions of anti-terror law known as Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. In fact, there were multiple terror laws. All these terror laws have been brought subsumed under UAPA, right? So this is an umbrella legislation. Okay. So he has been brought under this UAPA, and if he's imprisoned under this, it is very difficult to get bail and all those things. Okay. Now this person has been arrested for his book, which was published for his article, which was published 11 years back in 2011. He's arrested in 2022. 11 years. He wrote an article, the shackles of slavery will break. Right. So 11 years later, he has been arrested under this law for writing this article. Now we have many other related issues as well. For example, arrest of 3 student activists during the 2020 Delhi riots case. And some other people also have been arrested on this. Now, what are the observations of the court? So some of, the observations have been summarized over here. So one observation is that definitely terror laws are required. They are terror activities, incitement to terror and all those things. They cannot be same as the ones that are covered under ordinary laws or ordinary penal laws. So terror laws have to be there and they have to be stringent as compared to the penal code. Okay, so that is point number 1. But at the same time, state must bring out clearly the person charged is a threat at large if on bail. So if a person has been arrested, under Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, it is difficult to get bail. So they have to make it very clear that if this person is actually out, if he's out on bail, he may cause ruckus. He may engage in terror activities. He's a threat to the society. So that has to be clearly brought out. Then the state must be wary of 2 things. So one is intent and likelihood of doing a crime. So one is that a person intends to do something. There is a sense of intent when he writes something. But how likely is it that he would actually do it? Right? So one may be wary of this thing. So they cannot blur that there is a distinction between the two, and the state must be mindful of this. And lastly, when implementing such a strong law, there has to be a narrow interpretation of the law. So that has been said. And narrow interpretation means, again, narrow interpretation of intent and likelihood. So that is what the courts through various judgments have stated. Okay. And further, there is a concern that has been expressed that the state is using national security as a tool to deny citizens remedies like bail, etc., that are provided under the law. So this is not compatible with the rule of law. Many a times you will see people who are critical specifically, they're the ones who are charged with UAPA. Okay, so that is what the courts have observed. Now let's look at the question that was asked. Now, just to be clear, a question on UAPA was asked because that particular year amendments were made, very strong amendments were made to this. And of course, it was then challenged by the human rights organizations. But then, even now we have UAPA, which is there in the news all the time. So we should prepare this. Indian government recently strengthened the anti-terror laws by amending UAPA 1967 and the NIA Act. Analyze the changes in the context of prevailing security environment while discussing scope and reasons for opposing the UAPA by human rights organizations. So this part over here, this may change in subsequent exams that are asked, but this may remain the same. Changes in the context of prevailing security environment and the concerns associated with human right concerns associated with Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Okay. On our terms in our time, India should not talk to China yet, even if Biden talks to Xi. Okay. It's very simple. The author is simply saying that in the recent times, the Chinese, let me write Sino India, the Chinese have, of course, there has been a dispute between the two, border dispute. Then, of course, with respect to Ladakh issue, all that is there, Galwan and all. Besides Chinese opposing India's proposal for bringing so and so as a global terrorist, so that is being opposed by the Chinese. So India at the moment, because of all these events that have taken place, India is saying that until and unless this pending issues are resolved, we cannot have normalization of ties. Right? That is what they are saying. How can it be? So that's very clear. But the Chinese are saying that, you see, we have problems, but we should move on. We should separate the border dispute from the rest of the relationship. So their India-China relationship has so many other dimensions to it: climate change, economic cooperation. So many other things are there. So we should separate the border issue from other things. We should cooperate on other things, but if we have border, we should work on it separately. Indian side say no, border things comes first. Okay, so that has been our stand. So we have been pretty firm on this. I hope so. We have been firm on this. Okay. Now, in the recent times, US and Chinese have had problems, and US has decided to engage with China. That has been the policy of the Biden administration, that we should continue to engage with China even if we have issues. So on that front, the author is saying that if US and China are doing it, so it does not mean that India should also talk with Chinese, right? So we should do it in accordance with our convenience, on our terms, in our time. So that should be the focus. And one more dimension that he has brought up, which he brings up in all the articles concerning US China, he says that India's strategic position with respect to, if you look at the dynamics of India US China relationship, where is the ink on? Okay, so when we look at this relationship over here, India is taking a strong stance on this Chinese issue, be it through Quad, be it through IPEF, etc. And this hinges on the US support. Now, tomorrow, if US-China relation normalizes, it will make it perilous for India, right? So India is perennially nervous of Beijing's relationship with the Washington. So this, he says, this is overestimation of the talks. We should not be so concerned about it. Next, app mishap. So this is about the applications engaging in fraudulent ways of, first of all, they lure low and middle income classes. So they lure these people, they offer them loans, and at the time of payment, they quote very high terms, right? So the repayment value is much more than the money that has been borrowed. So very high rate of interest is charged, which is earlier concealed. So that is one thing. Okay. And further, if the person is not able to repay, so these applications, when we download these apps, we provide consent. So they take consent of our gallery also, our call details. On that basis, they blackmail the people who have borrowed money. Okay. And these apps also target those people in particular who have a low credit score. Right? If I have to go to the bank, if I have to take loan, they will see my CIBIL score. But here they are deliberately targeting people with the low credit score. In fact, I think credit card companies also do the same thing. Okay. Coming to this point now. So this is the issue that is taking place. Now, what steps are there? Right. So one is there is an RBI working group that was formed in August 2022. They have suggested creation of a new independent body known as Digita. So what is Digita? Digita is it's an agency known as Digital India Trust Agency. So this agency will review the companies, and on that basis, they will say this agency is fine or not fine, whatever. Plus, it will regulate this domain, Digital India. So, proposal of an institution, independent body known as Digita. Second is the whitelisting of legal lending apps. That is, these apps are permitted to give loans. So these we recognize you can borrow only from these apps. That is whitelisting of legal lending apps. These are already proposals that have been made. Then Ministry of Electronics Information Technology, they have suggested KYC norms for lending apps. So when we go to the bank, when we want any service, we have to fill in the KYC form. Similar thing should be there with these companies. Leaning towards optimism, this is about possible in India's assessment as to where we stand. So that is there. It is there in we have finance ministry data also. So that we will cover. Another seat at the table. Which table? Armed forces. So more, our armed forces should be more inclusive and should represent the transgenders should get representation. Earlier it was dominated by the males, then females were there. Then in combat roles also, we are talking about having them. Okay. So why are we talking about it? First of all, the author is a retired lieutenant general from the medical services, army. Okay. So, and why this talk is going on? So one is the Nalsa judgment, and which took place in 2014, and then the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2019, which basically gave effect to the Nalsa judgment. So what does the Nalsa judgment say? So Nalsa judgment was in 2014 Supreme Court case, and just this much. It says it recognized the transgender as the third gender and upheld their right to be treated with the same fundamental rights as guaranteed by the Constitution of India. Right, so they should have the same set of rights. So why discriminate? So male, female, and then the third gender. Depends how they want to define themselves. So that space was also there. And they should get a equality. That's the basic thing. Okay. So this law has been brought in. Okay. So this thing has been brought in over here. So in government posts, etc., they're being made open to the transgenders. Now, why not for the army? That is the basic thing. Army has already, a committee was formed and they have expressed concerns about inclusion of the transgenders, basically from the point of view of combat areas, difficult positions where separate provisions for transgenders, for example, toilets, that would be their issues with accommodation, right? So those things have been expressed, plus social norms and the army coming to terms with that. So that has been expressed by the army. Now, what does the author say? So, one, she welcomes such a move that if transgenders are made part of it. Further, she says social awareness strategy should be developed. Social awareness strategy so that the army is aware of these realities, right? So accept the realities of the previous discriminations that has been done. And there shall be a roadmap created to provides social awareness. So roadmap at all levels, at higher levels, middle levels, other ranks levels, Jawan level basically. Okay. So that is one thing. Second, she's saying is, so one is social awareness strategy should be there. Second, she's saying is what we can do is have relatively sheltered appointments. First, give them relatively sheltered appointments, and later on, full-fledged roles can be provided, as was done with the women officers. So that is another proposal. So sheltered appointments could be, for example, in medical services, they could be there. Then they could be first posted as staff officers, and gradually in more complex roles, they can be made part of that, like combat roles, etc. So there are two things, social awareness and relatively sheltered appointments, and gradually increase their share of representation. Okay, world news now. Israel Hamas close to temporary truce, release of some hostages. Fine, good. Houthis have captured a cargo ship which is linked to Israel linked cargo ship. So that there was actually a social media video on how this thing happened. They landed on an helicopter on the ship, and thereby they hijacked the ship. So they have means. Militant group, imagine, has the means to a combat helicopter. Next article, fairly important from India's context. So there is insurgency in Myanmar, right? Insurgency in Myanmar. And if you look at Myanmar, Indian Ocean region, Myanmar, there is this province known as the Rakhine province where Rohingyas are there. Rohingyas are ethnically from Bangladesh. They settled in Myanmar. Okay. So these people are then moving out from there. They are fleeing out of here. So Rohingyas, refugees, flee camps. They have been the victim of violence perpetuated by the Muslim majority Myanmarese groups. Okay, so now they are moving out of it. Now, what are the concerns? So one is there is a problem in this region, right? There is violence taking place. So we can talk about, so first refugees, Rohingyas moving out, coming into India, we have a problem with this. Plus some of the Rohingyas are associated with militant activities, so that is concern. Further, when we talk about Rohingyas, we say that we need to deport them, identify them and deport them. This compromises our relations with both Bangladesh and Myanmar. Okay, so that is there. Then another dimension is when we look at Act East policy of India, wherein we are looking at connecting India's northeast particularly with the Asian region through Myanmar. So the trilateral national highway, Kaladan highway project, Sitwe port project. So all these will pass through this sensitive area. So the safety of those projects may also be compromised. Okay. Equal marriage rights to same-sex couples. Thailand approves bill on this regard. Now, what was India's case, by the way, if you remember, Supreme Court case, in the majority verdict, same-sex marriage was not agreed upon in India's case, but in Thailand it is being done. Sometimes what is happening in international world domain influences the domestic affairs also. More Ukrainian soldiers bid to cross Dnipro River. So this was stopped by Russia. So Dnipro River, I don't know how it's pronounced. It is the fourth longest river in Europe. If you look closely over here, this is the map of Ukraine. You can zoom. Yes, this is the map of. Just a second. Okay, fine. See, this is Ukraine, and here there is Russia, and this is the eastern part. So Dnipro River logically should be flowing somewhere over here, right? So they want to cross over this because they want to access these areas of Donbass, etc. So this has been stopped by Russians. Now, again, this thing is there in the news. Basic idea we must have. Next is economy news. Plus some not so good news. Oil price was $79 per barrel. Now it is 82.93. Dollar is more or less stable at 83.34. Finance Ministry held its monthly economic review for October, right? And so that findings have come out briefly, and some key takeaways are mentioned. So one, it has expressed concerns about inflation and subsequent RBI rate hikes. Of course, RBI will increase the rate so that the supply of money is checked. So it says with this, this may affect when the rate is transmitted. RBI increases the rate. Subsequently, banks will have to increase the rate. So when this transmission takes place eventually to the end consumer, this will ultimately affect the demand. So that domestic demands. So this is a matter of concern, but that is why the rate hikes are made. Second, they are saying the financial flows in the external sector. Right. So there are two things of course here. So one is the US Fed Bank, for example, US Fed Bank, the England central bank. So because of the inflation, they have decided to increase their interest rates. So because of the increase in interest rate in US, money is flowing out. Right, foreign money that came into India is going out over here because here the prospects are better in US. So financial flows in the external sector need monitoring, as when more money goes out, it will affect the value of rupee. Rupee will depreciate. Further, it may lead to balance of payment problems. Right. So that concern has been expressed. Now, what is balance of payment? And yesterday also I told you that we need to prepare balance of payment, a quick definition of this topic. And besides, so balance of payment, we should have a quick definition. And what is with the internet today? And the key components of balance of payment. Right, so that should be there. It's basically the obligation that India have, the borrowings that has made, the money that is going out, the sum total is balance of payment. It includes current account, capital account, right? So all those are part of the balance of payment. Next is buoyancy. So there is continued buoyancy in revenue collection. Sometimes you can also write tax buoyancy. It means when the increase in income or when the GDP growth takes place, the increase in revenue collection or tax collection is in proportion to that. When that happens, we call it buoyancy. Buoyancy means tendency to float. So when the level of water rises, so the thing that is floating will also rise accordingly. So that is buoyancy. So this analogy, you can see it with the GDP and taxes. Then it has welcomed the recent steep and rapid decline of global crude oil prices, which I see it is already increased. Okay. Next, the exports. They say that exports prospects remain good. It doesn't talk about imports which are rising. Okay, export prospects that are good, and it will be led by the service sector, which is already performing well. Okay, IT Ministry to meet social media companies over deepfakes, make share SOPs. So of course, we need to have the definition of the deepfakes. I don't like the definition over here. Further, there is a mention of Section 66D of the IT Act, which entails punishment for cheating by impersonation, and further Rule 32B of the IT Act, which says that government can direct social media companies to take down certain content. OneWeb, which basically aims to have series of satellites in the space to transmit internet to the end user. So OneWeb gets regulatory nod for commercial satellite broadband. So this this nod has come from InSpace. So it has given approval. Now, what is InSpace? It is the agency of the government responsible for regulating space activities, granting authorization, and conducting space activities in the country. What is wrong? Okay. So here, if we go to this website of InSpace, it comes under Department of Space. It is designed to be a single window independent nodal agency and functions as an autonomous agency within Department of Space. The basic goal is to boost private sector economy within space domain. And it will look at how private sector can capitalize on GEO and LEO remote sensing satellite. Geostationary Earth orbit, lower Earth orbit. So that is there. Okay, next. IPEF supply chain won't impact policy space to export curves. Normally, if we look at restricting imports, here it's talking about export curbs. Maybe this maybe with respect to the food items, not mentioned stated over here, but maybe it is with regards to this. Okay, now IPEF countries are mentioned over here. So Australia, Brunei, Darussalam. So all these countries are part of the IPEF. Now coming to the explained section, I'm just doing this one article over here, rare metal found in satellite, which is tantalum. So what is tantalum, its key properties, and what is it used for? So tantalum, the atomic number is 73. It is gray, heavy, and very hard. So it is corrosion resistant. It is ductile. So ductile means it can be drawn into wires. It has a very high melting point. It was discovered by Anders Gustav Eckenberg, a Swedish chemist. Right. And Tantalus is named after a Greek mythological figure, which was to be a rich but wicked king of a town. Now, what are the uses? It can be used in the electronic sector, which we already knew. Okay. It can be a substitute for platinum because of its high melting point, and it does not react with the body fluids. Thereby, it can be used as for surgical equipment and implants. Plus, it is very hard also. And tantalum carbide and graphite